Even though this is happening, the FBI says this is the #1 threat against children right now.
You leave the room though. I'm busy talking with your daughter. I just saw her. She's like 16, I'm 27.
You want to tonight? Do you?
We told you what you need to do.
The damn scissor.
Get your hair? It's chopped.
Right now, there is a network operating on mainstream platforms like Discord, Roblox, Telegram, Instagram, and even WhatsApp, where kids go to play games and make friends online. They are probably threatening a kid to commit unspeakable acts against their pets. This is the 764 cult, a Satanist group that has been formally classified as a Tier 1 terrorist threat by the FBI. The same designation used for the world's most dangerous organizations. This network has been linked to school shootings, murders streamed live online, the systematic exploitation of thousands of and real-world violence across multiple continents.
Shout out to Sydney. Shout out to Gossip Girls. Yuki was here.
Fuck Cindy Johnson! They are extremely proud, sadistic people who have no regard for the law.
I will be reporting you to the police.
No, you won't do shit.
And many kids and innocent people are still falling victim to them today. What is the 764 cult group? And what dangers could you potentially get into on the internet by mistake? In this video, we will explore the background and structures behind this cult group. The phrase internet cult doesn't refer to a hidden forum buried deep in the dark web or a group of masked extremists plotting crimes in encrypted chat rooms. It's an online fellowship that has been sitting right in front of everyone. For the 764 group in particular, it doesn't begin with hardened criminals or organized terrorists, but with one deeply troubled teenager named Bradley Chance Cadenhead. For the duration of his internet reign, he went by the usernames Felix and Brad764 on a Discord server that many unassuming internet users fall prey to. One of these victims is a teenager we'll call Eve. Eve spent time online, which is true of most kids her age. However, somewhere along the way, she ended up in contact with members of a Discord server called 764, and nothing could have prepared her for what came next. Members of the server built a relationship with her first. They made her feel like she had found real friends and something more, and it didn't take long before trust was established. Somewhere in between, Bradley convinced her to send explicit photos of herself. And unfortunately for her, that's when the threats began. Reports say that members of the server told Eve they would release private images of her if she did not do what they said. They threatened to her younger brother, who was still in elementary school. On video calls with other members of the server watching, they pressured her to herself and her pet. Every time Eve did what they demanded, they made a new demand. The material they collected from each incident became the leverage for the next one. Her mother later described the moment she realized what was happening as a turning point that came almost too late. Eve had deeply herself one night in the bathtub, following instructions from members of the server. When Eve's family attempted to cut off her contact with 764, the network responded immediately. Compromising images of Eve were released. Her school principal received harassing phone calls falsely claiming she had committed acts of animal cruelty without coercion. Shortly after, the members were able to call the police to their home. Eve eventually got out and received help, but her case became part of the legal record that investigators used to build a picture of how 764 operated, as well as the person who had created it, that person being Bradley. From this documented case, you already have an idea of the kind of psycho he is. But the sick part of everything is that Bradley Cadenhead wasn't an adult who preys on kids. He was a teenager. He had created the group when he was only 15 years old and had reportedly named it 764 from the first 3 digits of a zip code associated with his hometown, Stephenville in Texas. His background was filled with surprising twists and turns. Based on court documents and reporting cited in the source materials, Bradley had an extremely difficult childhood. He was born into a church-going family. in Stephenville. His mother described him as a nonverbal child who could not attend high school in person because he was bullied as early as 6 years old. He had no real social life outside of the internet. His parents divorced, and he was largely left to raise himself online, with very little supervision over what he was consuming or who he was talking to. Bradley discovered at the age of 8, and then everything took a turn for the worse in 2016 when he was 10 years old. During this time, Bradley's mother had moved out of the family home, and his father retained primary custody of his son. Left to his devices, Bradley began seeking out violent material on the internet. The image of torture fascinated him whenever he played online video games like Minecraft, and Bradley needed the exposure for the shock value. By shock value, Bradley was essentially trying to get high off the images he was seeing on his screen. This is something no kid his age would have thought of, so it offers you a glimpse of the nature of his psyche. According to a user named Rex Macinas, who was familiar with online cult lore at the time, Bradley had joined an online cult called TPM on Kick, a streaming platform. He was 13 at the time. Now, it's unclear whether Rex's account is completely true, because there have been a few allegations of his retelling being biased due to his connection with the deep cult network. But his part will be included because it adds some layer to Bradley's fascination with such communities. And it also reveals the name of a friend who had been one of the main authority figures within 764. So moving forward, Bradley joined TPM, which was short for the Psychotic Murderers, and was led by a guy named Sean. Rex claimed that Bradley had joined this group under the username Proud Satanist, and had tried to build fame for himself by live streaming a video of him being a young child. But none of the members of the group acknowledged him, except one person who was within his age group, and that person was called Trippy. They became close friends who shared the same satanic ideals and premature edginess. However, the confidence boost this new development afforded him didn't make things better for him in real life. His parents' divorce had hit him hard, but things were no better at school. Classmates at Henderson Junior High School began to notice changes in Bradley's behavior, especially when it came to satanic praising. In 5th grade, he began making sudden, unprovoked outbursts and cursing in class, and the behavior eventually made him a target. It grew considerably worse as time passed. One time, it was reported that when he was in 7th grade, his father had found him curled up in a fetal position, crying with shallow on his arms. He was taken to the emergency room and then a mental health facility more than 100 miles away. A psychological evaluation at the time identified Bradley's case as disrupted mood dysregulation disorder, a condition involving severe chronic irritability and emotional outbursts adolescence, and noted suspected child neglect by mother and parental relationship distress. In the aftermath, Bradley was consumed by the negativity that his behavior soon crossed into criminal territory sometime in September 2018. According to the Post, his teacher informed the police that she had heard him talking about making bombs, shooting up the school, and posting the graphic videos on the internet. Even students had caught wind of this discussion around the same time. Students said they overheard Cadenhead saying he wanted to bring guns to the middle school and children, court records show. His teacher told police she didn't feel safe with him in her class because she had overheard him talk about making bombs, putting silencers on guns, and watching videos over the internet. Threats of this kind were not to be taken lightly, especially in 2018. In the first half of the year, there had been an estimate of 40 shootings across campuses in the entire United States. About 4 months prior, there had been a serious shooting at a school in Texas where a 17-year-old shooter had 10 people and wounded 10 others. Therefore, tensions surrounding gun-related incidents on school property were high. The authorities promptly reacted to Bradley's terroristic threats and placed him on juvenile probation for a year. He was 13 years old at the time. When he got out, some of Bradley's living situations changed. In the summer before 9th grade, his mother took primary custody of him. He started high school in August 2020, as schools reopened after the first wave of the pandemic. He lasted about a week before severe anxiety caused him to stop attending. And it was so bad that he stayed cooped up in his room. It was reported that his father would stop by the apartment each morning on his way to work to try to persuade his son to come to the door, but he would never answer. Without school, structure, and supervision during the daytime hours while his mother worked, Bradley retreated completely into his computer. Then in January 2021, his mother received a call saying he had to formally unenroll or she would face truancy charges. Bradley was 15 years old when he dropped out of school. From then on, he continued to live in his room, and it was in that room, in those months, that Bradley Cadenhead first encountered the Discord server called CVLT. He had left Kick completely to Discord, where he joined this new fellowship. CVLT was run by a user known as Rohan Rane. It was a structured neo-Nazi group system for targeting and exploiting vulnerable young people online, and a community that treated that exploitation as entertainment and a source of status. The group's ideologies range from extreme antagonistic foundations like anti-feminism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, misanthropy, misogyny. It's not an ideal platform for a child to be exposed to, but Bradley was already a teen with violent ideas. So, he welcomed the environment warmly. Rohan's stated philosophy, as he expressed it in his introductory message, was the creation of what he called an endless supply of masochistic people. He has been quoted saying, "We lack morals and ethics as we think they are not necessary. My ultimate goal is to create an endless supply of masochistic people to satisfy my sadism, and my cult is existing for that very reason." Rohan recruited minors on Instagram and Roblox by building false romantic relationships with them. Once he had obtained a single compromising image or piece of personal information, he used it as leverage to demand more. He described ethics as not necessary, a weakness to be removed from everyone in the community. Bradley was not a passive observer. He absorbed everything CVLT offered, the methods, philosophy, and infrastructure of exploitation. Just like we had seen him execute in Eve's case, he also met other people in adjacent communities who would become important to what he was about to build. And within weeks of formally dropping out of school in January 2021, he began building something of his own. 764 began as a Discord server, small and deliberately unremarkable in appearance from the outside. Bradley built it using the same recruitment strategies he had learned from CVLT. He and his group targeted mental health forums and communities for teenagers dealing with depression, eating disorders, and other struggles, because the people in them were more likely to be isolated, vulnerable, and desperate for connection. By spring 2021, 764 had begun expanding beyond its original Discord presence through a network of affiliated communities and cross-platform partnerships. Bradley, with the help of Trippy, began using automated bots to advertise 764 in group chats across platforms, drawing in new users from communities it had not previously reached, including parts of the furry fandom and various politically aligned spaces. Their recruitment poster included satanic symbols and poorly spelt words for manipulators and vandalism. At the bottom was the open invitation, still suffering from misspelling. It read, "Cause chaos with us. Join today." The use of satanic imagery and references, especially in the 764 logo, also indicates that Bradley drew inspiration from a group called the Order of Nine Angles, also known as O9A. This religious movement had originated from the UK in the 1980s and had been known for its neo-Nazi activism. Their members have been responsible for crimes ranging from arson to murder from 2011 till date. However, unlike this organization, Bradley's empire was digital and targeted at younger people on clear-as-day applications. Discord, the platform on which 764 was born, is built around private, user-created servers, essentially custom chat rooms that can be made invisible to anyone not specifically invited. The platform relies primarily on other users to flag abuse, rather than proactively monitoring private server activity. For Bradley, this design was ideal. It meant that he could operate in plain sight of parents who thought their kids were using mainstream apps, while the activity inside his servers remained largely hidden. Other desired applications include WhatsApp and Instagram. Nothing like the dark web like one would expect. The server was also advertised on Roblox, another mainstream gaming platform that tens of millions of children use every day. Parents would generally consider it safe, and Bradley banked on that. But regardless of the easy access, growing his network wasn't easy. Each time Bradley amassed followers, he would be reported by users who didn't like the nature of the cult group and would lose his account. It got to a point that creating new accounts was practically a daily affair for him because he was always banned on Discord. By the summer of 2021, he had been reported to the FBI 15 times, and he would proudly boast about this later on, saying that they hadn't done anything to him regardless. He was right though. From the beginning of his expansion phase, Discord had filed 58 separate reports to law enforcement about his accounts. However, no action was taken against him because he wasn't deemed an actual threat. And just as he could make new accounts in minutes, Bradley laid out contingency plans in cases where his Discord servers got bombed. For instance, he set up a backup Telegram channel as early as December 2020. This way, he wouldn't have to start from building afresh if anything went wrong. Unfortunately, this quick thinking would preserve the group, as the backup Telegram channel would later become a primary coordination hub by mid-2021. Telegram's encryption and more permissive content moderation policies made it much harder for outside parties to monitor activity or act against content being shared there. And with the stage now ready, Bradley and his group of like-minded members began their reign of terror. Within weeks of starting 764, Bradley was already participating in extortion. In January 2021, according to the Kiwi Farms forum, he took part in an extortion of a girl connected to another Discord community called Intense Talk. A video of part of that incident was uploaded to YouTube and shared widely on Reddit. It shows the girl taking orders from her extortionist, a then 21-year-old known as Moist Nigerian. He told her to write his name on her forehead with a marker, and then he ordered her to flash him on camera, with the other members of the group watching. Right in the middle of this session, the girl's father walked into her room and saw the ongoing situation. He quickly told Moist that he would report him to the police, but Moist taunted him, unbothered by the announcement.
I can hear you.
Hey, what's up? Yeah, I'm 27 years old, by the way, and I want your daughter to do stuff for me.
Okay, that's fine. I'll report you to the police.
Oh, I'm sure you will.
He continued to be disrespectful to the girl's father by asking him to leave the room so that she could show him more explicit images of herself. Then after the old man told him once again that he would report him to the cops, Moist bravely countered him, unfazed and unafraid.
Leave the room, though. I'm busy talking with your daughter. I just saw her. She's like 16, I'm 27.
The girl's father ended the call after that, but seconds later, they were reconnected, and Moist threatened the frightened girl.
They're gonna dox me.
Do you wanna tonight? Do you?
The call ended once again, but it was later discovered that the poor girl continued to do their bidding out of fear for what they would do to her if she refused, which, by the way, is very concerning. In most cases, they would expose explicit photos of you online, just like they did in Eve's case. They would post their victims along with other footage of them committing animal cruelty that they were forced to commit. In other cases, they would trick you into clicking on fake links that would provide them your sensitive personal information and use your home address to threaten you into submission. Sometimes they would SWAT your house, Swatting essentially means the deliberate, malicious act of calling emergency services with a false report to trick law enforcement into dispatching a team to a targeted person's home. It's completely illegal, and offenders could face federal or state felonies, years in prison, and massive restitution fines. Depending on your location in the state and the gravity of the swatting situation, prison sentences ranging from 5 to 20 years could be meted out. Bradley didn't care about legal consequences and had adopted this method quite early in his time as leader of 764. He always swatted victims who failed to comply with his requests by making reports about the very incidents that 764 members had forced them to commit. Here's one notable example involving a kid named Kanta. Kanta had tried to investigate Bradley in order to get him arrested. So, to gain his trust, he sent them his picture. However, he refused to lean into their extreme acts, and Bradley swatted him. First of all, he gained Kanta's home address by tricking him to click on a fake server link. And then he made a call to law enforcement claiming that Kanta had sent CP material to their Discord group.
This is Mel. How can I help you?
Alright, so can I report?
You can. Where did you see Chuck?
So there's this messaging app where you can message people. It's called Discord. And I was in this chat where people just post like memes and stuff. And this person, he said he liked watching CP, so we were talking about him, right? And then we all got a DM, and he had sent us a picture of this, like I just clicked off it right away. But this kid, he said he dropped his address, and I don't know if this is actually his address, but it might be.
As usual, he went by the name Felix in these fake calls and took care not to ever mention his name.
Yeah, it is Felix, so uppercase FELIX, period, #9055.
The 764 members thrived on this level of confidence, and that's why someone as cocky as Moist Nigerian couldn't be bothered about being reported by that teenager's father. While in the cult group, he had exposed a lot of victims to different levels of self-degradation. In one instance, he told a young girl to cut off her ponytail. There's no room for negotiation with them because they thrive off the feeling of superiority that their leverage affords them.
Okay, is there anything else I could do? Like a fan sign or something?
You have 30 seconds.
We told you what you need to do.
After she had cut her hair, Moist told her to put it in her mouth and apologize to him, her hair, and one other abuser named Duck. Humiliation rituals like this one are still on the mild side in 764's playbook. It sits right beside the holding of fan signs at the bottom of the scale, and no one is exempted from the experience, including family members. Like this case where Moist made his victim and her 2-year-old sister hold up handwritten signs saying, "Moist Nigerian has me and my 2-year sister. He's a sick man," and "Moist Nigerian love." These acts were milder in comparison to the other extreme ones that 764 members inflicted on their victims. One of their most documented cases involved a girl known in network communications as Holy Girl 222. She was coerced under threat of having compromising material released into her cat on camera. The image that circulated afterward showed her holding a fan sign bearing the name of her abuser, Court 764, alongside the deceased animal. She was subsequently doxxed and swatted after this incident. Victims are always at their mercy whenever they join the circle. Once someone was brought into the server, they were exposed gradually to increasingly extreme content like graphic violence and extremist conversation. Cruelty was basically their only source of entertainment, and harm was a path to status. New members who were not fully on board were pushed further in. Those who tried to report what they saw or leave the server faced retaliation, and those who stayed long enough were eventually targeted for the same treatment that Eve and thousands of others experienced. Sometimes extreme acts of violence were encouraged, and by extreme, we're talking about. While high on power, Bradley once admitted that he would like to watch someone themselves on video chat. "I want to watch somebody themselves in VC, video chat. Even other 764 members also shared this sentiment. Some have been known to have caused cases among their members. One major example involves a 25-year-old named Samuel Hervey from Minnesota. Samuel was once a high school valedictorian and a biochemistry student, but his life took a hard turn when his mental health collapsed during the pandemic, eventually leading to an involuntary commitment and a diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder. After he was released, he cut off contact with his family and set out on what he called a pilgrimage to Buddhist temples in India, only to get stranded in Kyrgyzstan when COVID travel restrictions caught up with him. Isolated and broke, he turned to Discord under the username Asunder and openly admitted how alone he felt, writing, "I am very lost. Should I accept this is the end? I have no support system. I really think the worst part is not having anyone to talk to." By the end of October 2021, Hervey had made a decision, and he created a Discord server dedicated entirely to his own, greeting visitors with the message, "Hello, welcome to my chat." It was at this point that a 15-year-old girl going by the screen name FMLK reached out to him under the pretense of friendship. She was actually a recruiter for 764, and she later admitted to the Post that she saw Hervey as an opportunity, recalling that she was getting her big break. She said, "It was a competition of who could do the worst thing, so I obviously felt very cool." FMLK's own path into the group started years earlier, when she was a friendless 13-year-old who skipped class to search for gory content online. Her interests had led her into chat rooms for CVLT 764's precursor group. Eager to belong, FMLK escalated to using racial slurs and bragging about crimes, including setting a rural grass field on fire and recording the flames as they drew closer to a neighboring village. Soon after, she was drawn into a manipulative relationship with a 20-year-old 764 figure named Kush, who alternated affection with degradation. Kush eventually pulled her into the group's inner circle, and from there, she began to recruit other girls to themselves on camera. However, this time, her personal mission was different. This time, her prey was someone who wanted to. Over the following days, FMLK pushed Hervey toward following through, telling him, "You can do this," and asking him things like, "When are you going to do it? What are you waiting for?" Hervey eventually got fueled with conviction and began to document countdowns. In one instance, he wrote to FMLK, "Today is the second to last day of my life. I bought the gasoline today. Right now, I kind of feel like it was always meant to end like this." The night before the planned execution, Hervey actually expressed reservations about his plan. He confessed on the server that he had trouble sleeping that night because he was crying, and admitted that he didn't want the story to end. However, no one responded to him or tried to talk him out of anything. FMLK herself said nothing because all she wanted from this incident was to scale up in ranks. So, the plan continued. When day arrived, Hervey traveled to a mountain outside Bishkek. He updated the chat room every step of the way, from the moment he boarded the bus to the moment he hiked up the mountain. Then when he got to his destination, Hervey live streamed himself. At least 29 people watched from the server as this chain of events unfolded, and their reaction was disturbing to say the least.
Big shout out to Money and big shout out to FMLK. And we gotta say, he took himself.
Some of them laughed and cheered as it happened, with others, like FMLK, applauding and crediting themselves for what they had done and just witnessed. It is reported that FMLK also lured a second victim, a teenage girl, into a similar by asphyxiation in March 2022. These cases prove how far she had gone to gain notoriety within the organization. In November 2022, police in FMLK's country confiscated her electronic devices after authorities traced material to one of her social media accounts. She acknowledged to the Post that she had sent that material. Rather than facing prosecution connected to Hervey's death, the police told her parents to get her a psychological evaluation. She was eventually diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, depression, and anxiety, and started therapy twice a week. From these cases, we can see that being able to convince someone to commit was like a badge of honor for members of this group. It didn't matter the subsidiary. Encouragement was top tier among ranks. However, the thing about the ranking system in 764 was that you were only as good as you were in the last report. Someone can easily one-up you the moment you slack off. And this brings us to one disturbingly unique dynamic within 764, the fact that perpetrators can turn into victims, and victims can turn into perpetrators. As crazy as it sounds, it has happened quite a number of times within the network. Victims can turn the tables by simply inflicting the same level of pain or even more on other members and other non-members. They often do this for the sake of escaping punishment and gaining notoriety amongst the top chain. Sometimes, these people reach out to other members of the group to ask for guidance, much like this case, where one person said, "I don't know how to extort," to which a member responded, "Don't worry, I'll teach you." Many of the members would be more than happy to oblige. In fact, one of 764's offshoots, a group named Harm Nation, has a stipulated handbook guiding users on how to blackmail and extort victims. It's titled Extortion Handbook, a comprehensive guide for perpetrators. And it's so long that it takes close to 4 hours to read through. The guide showcases tips on how to earn money, blackmail, and manipulate victims, as well as pointers on how to avoid law enforcement. This is such a bold and dangerous element that an internet cult group has demonstrated so far. And what makes this even worse is that it's exposed to vulnerable kids who either get trapped and have no choice but to become victims, or get trapped and find ways to exploit the system for their own gain. These handbooks and willingness to teach others how to be nuisances to society prove that 764 is all about survival of the fittest. The top chain always avoids humiliation and punishment, so people pretty much strive to get some level of appraisal. That also means that being an abuser doesn't automatically exempt you from being on the receiving end of abuse. One notable case example is the story of a member known as Yuri, whose real name is documented as Bojack Thomas Mensforth. Yuri was a member of Harm Nation and 764, and was known for exploiting more than 40 during his time active in these communities. He coerced victims into their animals and into producing exploitative content. But here is the part that is essential to understanding how the network worked. Yuri himself became a victim of the same community he was victimizing others in. He dealt with significant mental health struggles like emotional instability, trauma, which were visible in his online communications. At one point, another member of the community, named Beret, used a miscommunication between them as an opportunity to turn the network's methods against Yuri himself. In one chat panel on Discord, we see Yuri begging Beret and Beret responding by saying, "You're like my dog, now on a leash." And minutes later, Beret told Yuri to himself, the exact same thing he had been doing to other victims in the past. This moment of blackmail turned the tide completely against Yuri, who went from predator to prey instantly. And he never recovered from it because his declining mental health spiraled the more time passed. This is how poisonous the 764 network is to both the members and non-members. And despite this awful structure, they continued to grow demographically. Around May of 2021, 764 attracted attention from broader online communities when a video, believed to be connected to Eve's hamster incident, began circulating. The video reached audiences far outside 764's existing membership, including nationalist and far-right online communities, some of whose members reacted with public outrage. This attention, paradoxically, brought 764 further visibility and drew additional users into its orbit. The network was also expanding geographically. Brazilian users with connections to existing illegal content forums had by this point made contact with 764 through its Telegram channel. One well-known had joined the group. though 764 reportedly lost contact with this person after one of their Discord servers was terminated. The result of all this expansion was a network that was no longer a single Discord server run by a teenager in Texas. It had become a loosely connected ecosystem of communities across multiple platforms and multiple countries, and each was sharing their overlapping membership and tactics. Some of these offshoots and splinter groups include Harm Nation, KasKar, No Lives Matter, and the Maniac Murder Cult, also known as MKY or MMC. All these groups and more are regarded under an umbrella name called the COM, which is short for community. Each of them operates with some degree of independence, but still retain their unified, sadistic belief of pain, extortion, and chaos. And members of each team were at liberty to run their morbid affairs like a business model. One of the members of KasKar, known as Yuki, was infamously known for this. Yuki exploited across multiple platforms like Discord, Roblox, and Instagram. He and his other KasKar members have also reportedly caused at least 2 known. During his time as a member of the group, he amassed a collection of photos filled with signs on his victims. These kinds of documentation are quite prominent in the cult, and we'll get into them shortly. You see, with Yuki, he didn't stop tormenting his victims for the fun of it. He also profited off his extreme behavior. Other than extortion, Yuki was also known for creating what he called the Brick Squad. In an interview with a YouTuber named Ironic, who's like a journalist in comm space, 17-year-old Yuki advertised his brand, which was basically a contractual hire for violence job. Yuki had started this business as a side quest. For him, it was the kind where he could help people take out their online enemies. Yuki had a $100 million target to hit from this hustle, and it was something he thought of doing long term in hopes of achieving his desired amount.
Do you have like a plan, like when you won't do this anymore? Is there a certain amount of money you'll get to?
I think about 9 figs.
And how close are you?
Really far. I mean, 9 figs, that's $100 million.
Yuki took his job seriously, and in one of his attacks, he threw a brick at the home of a pregnant woman before vandalizing a truck just out front. Live stream footage of this incident can be found online, and in the aftermath of this particular bricking job, the mother went into cardiac arrest and lost her child. This is the level of ruthlessness that prevails in the 764 group. They can be for profit, and other times, they're just for fun and ideological justifications. Like the No Lives Matter group, another 764 affiliate. No Lives Matter, like the name implies, is a nihilistic group that doesn't believe in the value of all forms of life. For them, the mundane, which is a term for ordinary, everyday people, don't deserve to live. So they plan attacks on everyone for the sake of satisfying this morbid belief. They run operations across England, Sweden, Bulgaria, and Romania. And sick teenagers are using this premise to commit unprovoked attacks, especially against random weak people. In some gentle cases, they would elderly passersby on the street, but in severe cases, they commit murder. Here's a documented instance of a 14-year-old who stabbed an elderly man in Sweden. As always, it was caught on his own live stream. The teenager can be seen walking up to the man who was on his own, wheeling his bicycle on the street before a weapon was into his back. The attack left the 80-year-old man with a punctured lung. Apart from this case, the same 14-year-old was suspected to be linked to an earlier stabbing of a woman in her 50s that July. When the cult activities excite a degenerate set of teens, it causes widespread anarchy, and one particular 764 affiliated branch was notorious for this reason. This branch is the Maniac Murder Cult, otherwise known as MKY. The No Lives Matter is also regarded as a sub-faction of the Maniac Murder Cult, but the main group still has an upstanding reputation among cult ranks. The MKY extremist group has ties to Ukraine and is somewhat tough to get into. and the culture within the organization was centered on carrying out and filming real-world violence as a demonstration of commitment to the group. In a way, this meant that you could avoid falling victim to initiation into the movement like Bradley's 764. If you don't have an appetite for violence, you wouldn't need to partake in their gruesome rituals. But that would mean that the opposite applies to teenagers who enjoy being ruthless on and off the internet. A case example involves a 17-year-old German named Nino Luciano, who reportedly committed an unprovoked murder to join the group in 2022. Now, this might just be the most morbid yet accurate illustration of how 764 can influence the wrong people, or as it is in the eyes of the cult people, the right people. Nino was born in Germany in 2004. He was born to parents struggling with serious addiction issues, experienced withdrawal symptoms at birth, and was described as having had a childhood filled with mental health struggles, violent outbursts, and repeated institutional placements. By the time he was 11, he had been placed in foster care in Romania through a re-education program. He eventually became deeply involved in 764 affiliated communities online, particularly the Maniac murder cult. To prove his allegiance, he started a Discord video call which showed him walking up to a 74-year-old woman who was busy taking out her trash. Nino approached her and greeted her before knocking her to the ground. After this incident, he bragged in the group chat that he had stabbed someone and sent images of the MKY symbol he had carved into the concrete floor. Official records stated that Nino had thought she was either of Jewish or Roma descent, but it was later proven that she was neither of that. She was a woman taking her trash out on an ordinary morning. He was arrested the following morning for aggravated murder, attempted murder, and child offenses, and was sentenced to 14 years in a program focused on the rehabilitation of minors, reflecting his age under Romanian law. In addition to Nino's case, the Maniac murder cult also influenced another terror attack in Turkey. In August 2024, an 18-year-old neo-Nazi stabbed at least 5 people while wearing a skull mask and a Sonnenrad patched tactical vest. He was later apprehended by the authorities, who made a connection between him and the internet cult through a manifesto he had shared on Telegram minutes before the assault. Today, video clips of Nino's murderous exploits can be found on the internet, and it serves as a tool for boosting the morale of anyone who would like to join the group. And this brings us to another disturbing feature about these 764 affiliated cult groups. They all believe in the art of documentation. That is to say, merit and acknowledgement can only be granted to members once there's digital evidence and a collection of gory and explicit media. They're like trophies for them, keepsakes that they can either use to gain bragging rights among each other or use to blackmail their victims. For extreme groups like Maniac Murder Cult and No Lives Matter, these receipts can be in the form of live-streamed murder cases. For others like Harm Nation and KasKar, groups that thrive more on extortion, store records of their deeds in what they call lore books. These lore books are like digital albums created on Telegram channels that are used to record images of their victims. There are also images of abuse inflicted on the victim's pet. However, it doesn't mean that these modes of documentation are limited or unique to specific factions. All of them still share one common foundation under the calm and document in any way they see fit, but the value in these acts are higher when they are transmitted in real time. For instance, in the case of the rabbit, the victim, who was a teenager, had been forced to commit the act on a live stream with other members watching. The orchestrator of the abuse, a user named Harm, had been walking her through the process of her pet. Clips like this have their value in numbers of these cult members. The higher the number in your collection, the more you're respected and deemed one of the senior guys. This is the world of chaos that 764 had inadvertently exposed a lot of young teenagers to. Through its hub of cult activities, many mentally unstable kids got inspired to commit heinous crimes and gained access to groups that should otherwise be on the dark web and not a Discord server. Given his level of commitment to the cause, it's clear that he wanted this kind of explosion. But unfortunately for him, he couldn't stick around to witness the extent of his creation. Like we said before, Bradley had been reported to the authorities multiple times, and nothing was done about it each time. He even bragged about it online when someone had told him he could go to jail for the things he was doing, saying, "Have you seen the ST I've been doing for almost a year now?" Then in another case, when a user told him that it was risky to share explicit content, Bradley responded by saying, LOL. 764 without CP and gore is pointless. He genuinely believed he was untouchable, and for a long time, he was effectively right. But joke's on him, but just 3 days after that conversation in July 2021, Bradley was traced to his mother's apartment. When police entered his room, they noted that it reeked of body odor, and also found devices containing evidence of what he had spent years building. These were the same documented pieces of graphic violence involving a significant number of victims. Once upon a time, they had served as trophy boxes for his name, and now they were incriminating pieces of evidence that took him out of his family home, that Bradley was sentenced to prison on multiple consecutive counts, and is currently serving 80 years. The judge had arrived at this sentencing due to the nature and gravity of his offense, and the scale at which it was growing and continues to grow. Bradley is eligible for the 80-year sentence, but it's unlikely he would dodge his life sentence due to the gravity of the monster network he had created. Following his arrest, the FBI formally classified 764 as a Tier 1 terrorist organization, the highest possible threat designation in the United States. More than 60 investigations were opened, spanning every FBI field office in the country. It was discovered that the group had been linked to a school shooting at Antioch High School in Nashville, Tennessee. On January 22, 2025, a 17-year-old student opened fire in the cafeteria, one student and injuring another before his own life. Prior to the attack, the shooter posted an audio recording and manifesto where he expressed admiration for other killers and explicitly claimed he was carrying out the shooting on behalf of 764 and related extremist networks. Platform enforcement increased months later. Discord reported banning tens of thousands of accounts connected to the network. Roblox began acting against 764 affiliated usernames and logos. According to reports, there were. User-created skins for 764 themed characters with the group's insignia and open references to CSAM found on Roblox. Such references were out in the open on a gaming platform filled with kids and teenagers. However, Roblox has been tightening user-generated content in view of the rising cult issues, not only apps, but governments across the world. In December 2025, Canada formally listed 764 as a terrorist organization, and the first country to do so specifically targeting this network. That decision opened a broader debate among researchers and policymakers about whether terrorist designation was the right tool for a group structured the way 764 is structured. As of early 2026, governments are still working out what legal category this network belongs to. Fortunately, much awareness has been spread across the media, and both self-declared and suspected 764 members have either been on close watch and have been apprehended. In February 2026, a 20-year-old guy named Dakota Hudson was arrested on 5 charges. Dakota had been on the authorities' radar since early 2024, and although it took a while, he was finally brought to book on these charges. The widespread awareness of 764 serves a good purpose in making parents take charge of their children's screen time and pushing kids to become extra cautious in online forums and group spaces. However, there are some people who use the topic to chase clout. One notable example is a TikToker named Cbot. although he has changed his username quite a lot because TikTok keeps banning him every single time. Seabot once claimed that he was the leader of 764, and he often made inappropriate jokes about kindergartners. His rage bait tactics drew attention to himself, and he stood on business, unapologetic for the kind of content he was making. But other netizens try to warn him about the nature of the danger he was inviting to himself through his provocative content.
You're in danger. They got your social security card, your address, your family names. Obviously, this goes without saying, but your full name. They literally know everything about you. I saw somebody post your credit card, bro.
As long as the 764 network continues to threaten the peace and security of families on the internet, it's unlikely there would be clemency for perpetrators like Bradley and other extremely violent members of the organization.